Hello. Today I'm going to be presenting an analysis of The Shining that combines a lot of the well-known theories about the movie and presents them in a concise manner that hopefully will be easy to understand. And also I'll be presenting some new ideas about the movie that I don't really think have been talked about enough. So, the main question, what is The Shining about? If you've seen this movie a number of times, you've probably asked this question yourself. It's very ambiguous. It seems like at its base level, it's just about a man trying to kill his family, but there are a lot of things going on in the movie that um, I'm sure anyone who's seen the movie many times has tried to figure out, but it's really worth getting into, and I'm going to try to get into that some. So I'm going to be doing that by going over the main stories in the movie, um, just like the narrative from the novel, and other things like that. The subplots, kind of some of the smaller things that spawn from the main story, the themes, and a couple Easter eggs. So, starting with the main story, I guess the main question that arises, Jack trying to kill his family, is he hallucinating and going insane, seeing these things? Or is he becoming possessed by some sort of evil spirit in the hotel? And is he, like sort of just seeing the things that Danny is sort of in tune with? So it starts around an hour in when he first sees Lloyd and the alcohol.
Yes, it is, Mr. Torrance. What would be?
So this would make a lot of sense for a man, very many months sober, former alcoholic, hasn't seen anybody else in months, to, hallucinate and see something like this. It would be a very realistic portrayal of what that would look like, and it would make sense for, him to go down the path he did. But if he was becoming possessed and this in a hotel had just some sort of evil spirit with it and it was trying to lure him in, that would also make sense, and that would be a realistic portrayal of that as well. But with this key question, does Jack become possessed by the hotel, or is he going crazy? At this point in the film, you really start to see Jack Torrance act differently. For most of the time up to this point, he was pretty plain dad, husband, you know, teacher, writer. But um, after this point, he starts to become a lot more eccentric and sometimes seductive in the way he interacts with other people, as we can see here.
Jack?
Yes, it's me.
Which supports more of the theory of possession rather than insanity, because if he's going insane, he wouldn't be able to act like this.
Did you find anything?
No, nothing at all. I didn't see one goddamn thing.
So in this sense, it seems to make more sense that he's,
You went into the room, Danny said.
like, the evil spirit in the hotel has possessed him,
And you didn't
and
see anything
he's
at all?
just starting to act out its, its evil wishes and its
He's
whatever
still
it
asleep.
wills him to. Let's see. So here, when he meets Lloyd again,
Drinks, Lloyd.
and this line in particular that Lloyd's about to say,
It's not a matter that concerns you, Mr. Torrance. At least not at this point.
at least not at this point. I know, personally speaking, the first couple times I saw this movie, that line stuck out to me as kind of corny and weird. But on subsequent rewatches, it's actually felt like been a lot more. It's had a lot more weight to it in the sense that it does seem something like something appealing a hallucination would say to you, like that. It's not a matter that concerns you at this point. Meaning, like, oh, the hallucination's in control. You don't gotta worry. You gotta sit back. But it also seems like the house, the hotel, is generally in cahoots, and they have a plan for him. and he's just gotta tag along.
Anything you say, Lloyd. Anything you say.
So, as with a lot of other Kubrick movies, this question isn't really answered. If Jack is possessed, or if he's going insane, it can work either way. But it's worth noting that that is kind of a question that you should keep in mind when watching the film. So that's, I think, the main question of the space level story. But another interesting story that's very present is of a dissolving marriage. So, I think one of the most important scenes in the movie is when Jack finds this woman in the tub here. So, this can be viewed, I think, as the hotel, presenting itself as this beautiful young woman, inviting him in, and he sort of falls for the trick, and this is when the hotel, sort of puts itself inside of him. But it's also, I think, about marriage, in that, you fall in love with a young, beautiful woman, and as we'll see in a second, when you commit and get married with this young, beautiful woman, sometimes you'll get stuck with this old hag, as we'll see in a second. There you go, that transformation. Which this also can be seen as he fell for the trap, whether it's the evil of the hotel or it's the devil, there's temptation. That's what happens. Also, a couple other things with this sort of dissolving marriage idea at 2020. Mr. Ullman refers to their room as an apartment instead of a hotel room.
Well, in view of all the ground we have to cover today, I suggest we go have a quick look at your apartment and then get started straight away.
And that sort of comes up later as Jack and Wendy's arguments start escalating. But the first argument here at 43-ish. So this kind of marks maybe Jack going insane, but it's also just a very reasonable argument that couples frequently have, right? So Jack's trying to be a writer. He was just trying to write, but as we know, he wasn't coming up with anything good, kind of failing. It's kind of bringing him down. So just as he's failing to write,
Yes.
his wife comes in and kind of reminds him, oh yeah, not only can you not write, you're a failure, but you had to take this responsibility as a father.
Said it's gonna snow tonight.
And that just sort of makes him more frustrated.
What do you want me to do about it?
So this is a very reasonable argument, although it represents, or it's indicating as he's starting to
Don't be
go
so
crazy.
grouchy.
I'm not being grouchy. I just
Also,
finish my work.
so this argument, the kind of underlying factors
Okay,
of
I understand.
what's making
I'll come back
the
later on with a
tension
couple of sandwiches
becomes
for
more
you.
verbalized later on here.
It is so fucking typical of you to create a problem like this when I finally have a chance to accomplish something, when I am really into my work. I could really write my own ticket if I went back to Boulder now, couldn't I? Shoveling out driveways, working a car wash. Would that appeal to you? Wendy, I have let you fuck up my life so far, but I am not gonna let you fuck this up.
So, it's a pretty typical argument for a couple to have, right? Dad walks out. But one thing to note, their hotel room here, I don't think it really looks like a typical hotel room. It looks like an apartment. And father walks out. Danny's in the other room listening to his parents fight. There goes the dad, most likely to go get drunk. And lastly, their biggest argument here.
About my
So it seems like Jack's just totally off the deep
Have you
end,
ever had a
going
single
nuts.
moment's thought about my responsibilities? Have you ever thought for a single solitary moment about my responsibilities to my employers?
But he's actually making a reasonable point, although he's kind of, you know, a bit heated. He's talking about how, if he failed to watch over the hotel and they just left, his name would kind of be ruined. And he wouldn't become a writer, blah, 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 blah. And
Has it ever occurred to you that I have agreed to look after the Overlook Hotel until May the 1st?
Sort of confused and conflicted.
Does it matter to you at all?
Okay. So, I think those are pretty much the main stories to look out for in the movie. Now, the subplots. The sexual abuse between Jack and Danny. This has been talked about a lot. And it's a pretty important part of the movie. So I think this starts around here, where they're shown the room.
Here are your quarters.
Mr. Ullman's going to show the kids' room, and Jack's going to do this weird look over that's highlighted by a camera move.
Living room, bedroom, bathroom, and a small bedroom for your son.
Perfect for a child.
Yeah.
And watch this. That little weird side eye Wendy gives. That's in the beginning. That's just like a little, I don't know, hinting at what's to come, I guess. And then later on, we have this scene. Now, I think it's insinuated that this is when Jack assaults Danny a second time. Also, it should be noted that I think the sort of previous time when Jack injured Danny and hurt his arm, that was actually, he wasn't pulling away from his papers. There was actually another sexual abuse instance. But we'll get into that later. So, at this point in the film, this is kind of, I think, just a realistic portrayal of what, like a creepy dad abusing his son, what that looks like, how it builds up to that.
Dad?
And I'll skip ahead.
Do anything to hurt you. Never. You know that, don't you?
Yes, Dad.
So, I think that, big crescendo and accent is like when it happens, he assaults him. Now, something else. So shortly after that, when Dick, Halloran, and Danny are communicating like this later, Danny is shown with this sort of something oozing out of his mouth, off his lip, onto his shirt, and I'll say that Stanley was known to have a dark sense of humor. I'll just leave it at that. But let's see. So also with the sexual abuse narrative, we have when Jack and Mr. Grady are talking in the bathroom.
He is a very willful boy.
Indeed he is, Mr. Torrance. A very willful boy. A rather naughty boy, if I may be so bold.
Now, at this point, it is unclear if this is Jack talking to a hallucination about
It's his mother.
him abusing his son, or if it's the hotel talking to him. Either way,
Fears.
it's a pretty cool scene. If you've watched the movie
Perhaps
through its entirety up to
they
this
need a
point, this
good
scene will just knock you out.
talking to.
And lastly, of course, the very well-known part with the dog, or bear, rather. Now, first time anybody sees this movie, this scene's just like, what the fuck? You must have just put that in there to fucking, be weird, make you feel uncomfortable. But after you've seen it a couple times, it's kind of becomes a lot more clear who those people are. It's Jack on the bed, and Danny as the little bear. And, so it is kind of insinuated that when Danny comes in with the marks on his neck after after they're sitting on the bed, that was Jack. But it's never made clear. That ambiguity sort of leaves it open to interpretation. So another subplot that people like to talk about a lot is the idea of The Shining being a way for Stanley to admit to faking the moon landing without actually, admitting it. This is I guess, a bit less related to the movie itself, or like what's happening in the movie, and more just a little cool theory that people have. It's a little hard to debunk. A lot of people close to Stanley have said in the past that, like there's no way he could have because we were around him during that time. But should be noted that after that little scene with Jack and Danny on the bed, Danny now has this Apollo 11 rocket sweater, which could be viewed as just this rocket pointed towards his mouth, which has a lot of sexual connotations, or it can be viewed in the context of this moon landing theory, which is also supported in this argument with Jack.
Thought for a single solitary moment about my responsibilities to my employer.
And Jack stressing his responsibility to his employer. So people in the past have viewed that as when if Stanley agreed to fake the moon landing, and he had to keep it totally secret, maybe this was his inner conflict about should he tell his wife, or, what should he do? Should he maintain his responsibility to his employer in the sense that he was employed by the government? I don't know. A couple other details about this theory. The room 217 was changed to room 237, and there are 238,000 miles between the Earth and the Moon. This figure might have been thought as 237,000 back in 1980. I'm not really sure, but if that was the case, then room 237 could be also viewed as like this sort of dark secret of working with the government, or this sort of world that Stanley experienced and wanted to just kind of put in this movie as like a little, not Easter egg, but just, I don't know, I guess getting it off his chest. It's an interesting theory. There's definitely merit to it. Now, so some of the themes of the movie that play with these stories: tragedy versus evil. This really plays mostly with the insanity versus possession story. Like, was this just an unavoidable tragedy of the human condition, kind of going crazy when you're too isolated and was wanting to kill everybody? Or was it more of this dark-rooted evil, like maybe it's like the devil, and could it have been avoided? Like, are people capable of this kind of evil? Or does the evil, just kind of come about them? This kind of plays into the kind of question of God in the end of the film, like, if God exists, why would he allow this kind of thing to happen, sort of thing. But I think that question is kind of answered in the sense that all characters sort of get their comeuppance. In the sense that those that were living, like, virtuously sort of lived good lives, and those who weren't did not. But that also kind of come into this theme of lying here. We're going to get into a second. Now, the masculine versus the feminine. So when people talk about this movie, in particular this character, Wendy, they like to say how, oh, she's just such a demeaning portrayal of a woman. It's the most misogynistic. She's just screaming and being dumb. But that's, I think, like, dead wrong. Um, she is meek and small, but she also, I think, represents the sacred feminine in that she doesn't ever try to kill Jack. She locks him. She outmaneuvers him, is more resourceful than him, and then instead of just leaving him, she locks him in a pantry with food. Now, something cool here, in terms of masculine versus feminine, just these two characters. How Jack is just sort of this large, like a bull, angry predator, and she's just like this meek mouse. That's really illustrated with shots like this.
How do you like it?
See how he's this big, overshadowing figure, and she's just this small, little, scared figure.
How do you like it?
How do you like it? And yeah. Now, so another key theme: lying. All the characters that lie in the movie die, and the only characters that died are the ones who lied. I'll show you some of the times the characters who died being Jack and Dick.
Put off
the
idea of staying alone.
I don't have to show all of them. If you're interested, you can check them out. These are the timestamps.
You can rest assured, Mr. Ullman, that's not going to happen with me. And
And we'll show Dick.
Doc, you called Danny Doc twice just now.
I did?
Yeah. We call him Doc sometimes, like in the Bugs Bunny cartoon. But how did you know that?
Well, I guess I probably heard you call him that.
Well, it's...
I know, I'll just show the rest of them. This can be really viewed as when Dick seals his fate. Danny says, "You're scared of the room, ain't you?" He says, "No, I ain't."
Mr. Allen, what is in room 237?
Nothing.
Which I guess can be viewed as kind of a fundamental difference between maybe Danny and Wendy, who sort of have more respect for the supernatural, I guess you'd say, the unknown, and when Dick in this instance says, "I'm not scared." But we also have here Jack lying again.
Here, ever.
Oops.
Never.
I'd never hurt you.
You know that, don't you?
Yeah.
Oh, world. I would never do anything to hurt you.
And I think one more time of Jack lying. Or no, it's Dick actually. So this is a direct example of his lie leading to his death. He's lying to get to the hotel.
Getting up there today, especially in this kind of weather.
Larry, just between you and me, we got a very serious problem with the people who are taking care of the place. They turned out to be completely unreliable assholes. Ullman phoned me last night, and I'm supposed to go up there and find out if they have to be replaced.
So if you haven't seen the film, that's not true. Dick and Danny just communicated with The Shining, and he knew something horrible was going to happen and had to get up there. It's not the case that they were unreliable assholes, even though I guess they were. So that about wraps it up for, I think, some of the themes I wanted to go over. Now, a couple Easter eggs. There are a lot of Easter eggs in the movie, most of which are pretty well known. Here are a couple that I think haven't really been talked about a lot. So in the context of the sexual abuse subplot, we have, at the very climax of the movie, Jack chasing Danny, and he screams this.
I'm coming! I'm coming, Dad!
Now, the first couple times I saw this movie, I thought the hedge maze scene was just kind of boring. But then after I sort of paid more attention to some of the things I talked about, this kind of came out, I thought it was pretty funny. Another thing, so this shot here is talked about a lot in other analysis videos. At this point in the film, you know, you start to you're viewing the characters from hell, and look at the cameras coming up from hell. And he's looking crazy.
Wendy.
Oh, that's true. We can actually check out this behind the scenes of The Shining, shot by Vivian Kubrick, and we can see Stanley actually setting up the shot.
It might be better to just play it as a medium shot with the situation. Yeah, maybe.
Can you do it with your head down? Yeah. Well, that's not bad. Do that.
So as you can see, although it's possible Stanley was thinking about the way this played in with hell and things of that nature, it does seem like he was more just trying to make an interesting angle to keep the shot fresh. So in that sense, all these theories and all other theories should just be taken with a grain of salt, and it should be known that this movie is really just a product of someone who's great at making movies in an ambiguous way, and it really should just be enjoyed for what it is. You should kind of make your own theories.
I think you hurt my head real bad.
And just go watch the movie.
I'm dizzy.